In 1944, Adolf Hitler made critical military decisions based on intelligence reports. The reports came from his most trusted spy network in Britain. The network had operated successfully for 3 years. It had never been detected. It had provided consistently accurate information. Hitler trusted this network more than his own generals. He deployed 2 Panzer divisions based on their reports. He reinforced coastal defences at specific locations. He held reserve forces in position waiting for the invasion they predicted. There was only one problem. Every single spy in the network was working for the British. Every report was carefully crafted deception. Every piece of intelligence was designed to mislead. The network wasn't German, it was British, and it was about to help win the war. This is the story of Operation Double Cross, the most successful counterintelligence operation in history, the operation that turned every German spy in Britain into a British asset, and how a small team of British intelligence officers played chess with the German military intelligence using phantom agents and carefully constructed lies. The deception was so perfect that the Germans never suspected. They kept sending orders. They kept believing reports. They kept being misled until D-Day, when they discovered they had deployed their forces exactly wrong, based on intelligence from spies who had been British pawns for years. Historical context: the spy network that failed in 1939. German military intelligence, the Abwehr, had ambitious plans. They would infiltrate Britain with hundreds of trained agents. These agents would gather intelligence on British military capabilities. They would prepare the way for German invasion. The plan was comprehensive. Agents would be recruited from neutral countries. They would be trained in espionage tradecraft. They would be equipped with radio transmitters. They would establish cover identities in Britain. The Abwehr invested enormous resources in this network. Millions of Reichsmarks in funding, years of training infrastructure, sophisticated communication equipment, elaborate cover stories, and false documents. The first agents arrived in Britain in September 1939. They came by boat, parachute, and submarine. They carried forged papers, British currency, and radio equipment. They were Germany's eyes in enemy territory. Within 48 hours, most were captured. Within a week, nearly all were in British custody. Within a month, the entire German spy network in Britain had been compromised. The failure was comprehensive and catastrophic, but the Germans never knew. The British counterintelligence service, MI5, had advantages the Germans didn't anticipate. Britain is an island. Every arrival by boat or aircraft was monitored. Every foreigner was tracked. Every unusual radio transmission was detected. MI5 had broken German codes through signals intelligence. They could read Abwehr communications. They knew which agents were being sent. They knew their cover stories. They knew their missions. When German agents arrived, MI5 was waiting, not to arrest them immediately, but to turn them. The proposition was simple: work for us or be executed. German agents faced an impossible choice: continue their mission and be immediately detected and hanged, or cooperate with British intelligence and survive. Most chose survival. The few who refused were tried in secret and executed. Their deaths were never publicized. The Germans assumed these agents were successfully operating. By 1940, MI5 had captured or turned every German agent in Britain, every single one. The achievement was unprecedented in intelligence history. But capturing enemy spies was only the beginning. The real innovation was what Britain did next. Instead of shutting down the German network, they ran it. British intelligence officers composed messages for captured agents to send back to Germany. The messages were carefully crafted to seem authentic. They contained enough genuine information to maintain credibility, but the crucial information was false. The operation was given a code name, Double Cross. The name had two meanings. First, it described what the agents were doing, double-crossing their German handlers. Second, it referenced the Roman numeral XX, a double cross. The double cross system, as it became known, was overseen by a committee, the 20 Committee, named for the Roman numeral XX. The committee met weekly to coordinate the activities of all double agents. They decided what information each agent would report. They ensured consistency across all reports. They created an entire fictional world for the Germans to believe. The committee was chaired by J.C. Masterman, an Oxford academic. Masterman had no formal intelligence training. He was a historian and a mystery novelist, but he understood narrative structure and character development. He approached counterintelligence like writing fiction. Each double agent was a character in an ongoing story. The story had to be internally consistent. It had to be believable. It had to lead the Germans to specific conclusions. The Germans had to believe their spy network was functioning perfectly. They had to trust the information they received. They had to act on intelligence that would damage their own interests. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If the Germans suspected deception, they would change their communication codes. This would blind British signals intelligence. It would eliminate the advantage that was winning the war. The double-cross system had to be perfect. One mistake, one inconsistency, one suspicious report could expose the entire operation. For 5 years, the system was perfect. Not one double agent was exposed, not one report was questioned. The Germans never suspected. Technical analysis, building believable lies, running double agents required extraordinary attention to detail. Every message had to be authentic in tone, content, and technical characteristics. The Germans were sophisticated intelligence professionals. They would detect any inconsistency. The technical challenges were immense. Each agent had a unique radio transmission style. The rhythm of their Morse code was like a fingerprint, called their fist. British radio operators had to replicate each agent's fist perfectly. When an agent was captured, MI5 observed them sending messages. They recorded the timing patterns, the spacing, the characteristic errors. Some agents transmitted quickly, others slowly. Some made consistent mistakes on specific letter combinations. Some had distinctive patterns in their spacing between words. These characteristics were unconscious habits developed over hundreds of hours of practice. They were nearly impossible to fake convincingly. A trained German radio operator could detect a substitution immediately. British operators spent weeks practicing captured agents' transmission styles. They would send practice messages and compare them to recordings of the original agent. Only when the match was perfect would they be allowed to transmit operationally. The practice sessions were grueling. Operators would transmit for hours, receive feedback on deviations, and practice again. Some agents' styles proved nearly impossible to replicate. These agents had to continue transmitting themselves under British supervision. This created a different problem: controlling agent behavior during transmission. Some agents would try to signal their captivity through subtle variations in their fist. German intelligence trained operators to detect such signals. A slight hesitation here, an unusual error pattern there. These could indicate coercion. British handlers would sit next to agents during transmission. They would watch for any attempt to signal. The threat of immediate execution prevented most attempts, but the psychological pressure on both agent and handler was intense. The content of messages was equally critical. Each agent had specific intelligence requirements from their German handlers. These requirements were called their questionnaire. Responses had to address the questionnaire while serving British interests. The questionnaire system was sophisticated. German intelligence didn't simply ask, "What is the enemy doing?" They asked specific, detailed questions designed to elicit precise answers. Example questionnaire from 1943. Report on RAF bomber production at Coventry facility. Specifically, 1. Aircraft types being produced. 2. Daily production rate. 3. Worker shift schedules. 4. Security measures in place. 5. Transportation routes for completed aircraft. Each element required a specific answer. Vague responses would raise suspicion. The answers had to be detailed enough to seem authentic, but false enough to serve British deception objectives. The 20 Committee developed a sophisticated information policy. They categorized intelligence into 3 types: information that was true and harmless, information that was true but would become obsolete before Germans could exploit it, information that was false but believable. True and harmless information established credibility. For example, reporting troop movements that had already been completed. By the time Germans received and analyzed the information, the troops had moved again. The information was verifiable through aerial reconnaissance. This proved the agent had genuine access. But the information was militarily useless. It described past events, not current deployments. Germans could verify accuracy, but couldn't exploit it. True but obsolescent information seemed valuable, but wasn't. For example, reporting ship movements through specific ports. The information would be accurate for 24 to 48 hours, but by the time German U-boats could respond, the ships would have sailed. This category was particularly effective. Germans would attempt to act on the intelligence. Their failure wasn't due to bad intelligence. It was due to operational delays. This encouraged them to act faster next time, which made them more likely to act on false information without careful verification. False but believable information was the weapon. This information supported whatever strategic deception Britain wanted to create. The false information had to fit perfectly with the true information. Any contradiction would raise suspicions. Creating believable false information required understanding German analysis methods. German intelligence would cross-reference agent reports with aerial reconnaissance photographs, signals, intelligence intercepts, reports from other agents, public information from newspapers and radio, previous reports from the same agent. The false information had to be consistent with all these sources. If a double agent reported a division in location X, aerial reconnaissance would need to show evidence of that division. This led to elaborate physical deception operations. Fake military installations were constructed specifically to support double agent reports. The installation would be built weeks before the agent reported it. German reconnaissance would photograph it, confirming it existed. Then the agent would report details about the installation. From the German perspective, the sequence seemed logical. Reconnaissance detected something unusual. Agent reported details explaining what was detected. This independent confirmation made the agent's intelligence seem extraordinarily valuable. In reality, the entire sequence was choreographed. The installation was fake. The agent report was scripted. The confirmation was manufactured. But Germans couldn't detect the deception because every verification method confirmed the story. Managing this complexity required a database. The 20 Committee maintained detailed records of every message sent by every double agent. The database tracked what each agent had reported, when they reported it, what the Germans had asked for, what follow-up questions resulted, what other agents had reported on related topics, what physical evidence supported or contradicted reports. This database was maintained on index cards. Computers didn't exist in 1944. The entire system was manual. The 20-committee office contained filing cabinets with over 50,000 index cards. Each card documented a single piece of information reported by an agent. The cards were cross-referenced by agent name, date, topic, location, and related reports. Before approving any new message, committee members would search the cards. They would verify that the new information didn't contradict previous reports. They would check that related agents' reports remained consistent. They would ensure that the new information fit the overall deception narrative. This verification process took hours for each message. But it was absolutely necessary. A single contradiction could expose the entire system. The complexity grew exponentially with each additional agent. By 1944, the double-cross system controlled over 120 agents, each sending multiple messages per week, each building a consistent fictional reality. The fictional reality had to account for German aerial reconnaissance. If double agents reported military installations, those installations had to appear real from the air. This led to elaborate physical deception operations. Fake army camps were constructed with inflatable tanks that looked real from 10,000 feet, dummy aircraft made from wood and canvas, fake supply depots with painted crates, simulated vehicle tracks created by dragging chains behind trucks, mock headquarters buildings with appropriate camouflage. These installations consumed enormous resources. Over 1,000 workers were employed in deception construction. Thousands of tons of materials were used. Entire military units were dedicated to maintaining the illusions. But the investment paid enormous dividends. German reconnaissance photographed these installations regularly. The photographs showed exactly what double agents had reported. This photographic confirmation convinced Germans that their agents were genuine. The synchronization between double agent reports and physical deception was critical. Reports preceded physical evidence by days or weeks. This suggested agents had advance information. Then German reconnaissance independently confirmed the reports. This convinced Germans that their agents were extraordinarily well placed. The timing had to be perfect. If reconnaissance photos were taken before installations were completed, the deception would fail. If agents reported installations long after they were visible, they would seem incompetent. A dedicated coordination unit synchronized all elements: double agent reports, physical deception construction, German reconnaissance flight schedules, signals intelligence about German analysis processes. Every element had to align perfectly. The coordination required unprecedented interagency cooperation. MI5 ran the double agents. MI6 provided intelligence on German capabilities. The Army constructed physical deceptions. The RAF scheduled reconnaissance to ensure German photos captured the right views. This level of coordination was historically unprecedented. Different agencies with different cultures and priorities had to work seamlessly. The success depended on perfect synchronization across multiple organizations. That it worked at all was remarkable. That it worked flawlessly for 5 years was extraordinary. The crown jewel of the double-cross system was an agent called Garbo. Garbo was the code name for Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spanish anti-fascist. Pujol approached British intelligence in 1941, offering to spy for them. The British initially rejected him. They thought he was unreliable and possibly a German plant. Undeterred, Pujol approached the Germans. He claimed to be a Spanish diplomat with access to Britain. He said he could establish a spy network inside Britain. The Germans recruited him enthusiastically. They gave him training in espionage tradecraft. They provided $600 in operating funds. They gave him invisible ink and secret writing materials. They assigned him a German handler and radio schedules. There was one problem. Pujol had never been to Britain. He was operating from Lisbon, Portugal. He had no spy network. He had no access to British intelligence, so he fabricated everything. He used British tourism guides from the local library. He read British newspapers available in Portugal. He studied train timetables and maps. He invented an entire fictional spy network. His reports were absurdly inaccurate. He reported that soldiers in Glasgow would do anything for a litre of wine. Scots don't drink wine, they drink whiskey. He reported troop movements through non-existent locations. He described British morale in terms that revealed he'd never spoken to an actual British person. But the Germans believed him. They praised Pujol as their best agent in Britain. They sent him substantial payments, which he pocketed. They made military decisions based on his fabricated intelligence. British intelligence monitored German radio traffic through signals intercepts. They noticed references to an extremely productive agent in Britain. They were concerned. They thought they had captured or identified all German agents. Who was this super spy they had missed? Investigation revealed the truth. The agent didn't exist. Or rather, the agent existed, but was sending completely fabricated reports from Portugal. British intelligence was initially furious. This charlatan was confusing German intelligence, which complicated British deception efforts. Then someone had a brilliant realization. If this man could deceive German intelligence this successfully, imagine what he could do with British support. If his fabrications were believed without evidence, real intelligence with evidence would be unquestionably trusted. In April 1942, MI5 brought Pujol to Britain. He became Garbo, named after the actress Greta Garbo, because he was the greatest actor in the world. They provided him with a house, a radio transmitter, a handler, and resources to elaborate his fictional spy network. Pujol's genius was understanding what made a spy network believable. A single agent with perfect information would be suspicious. Too convenient, too perfect, too consistent. German intelligence would suspect he was controlled by the enemy. But a network of sub-agents with varying access and reliability seemed authentic. Real spy networks have internal conflicts, communication problems, and reliability issues. Pujol designed his network to have all these authentic characteristics. He created 27 fictional sub-agents. Each had a distinct personality, motivation, background, and level of access. Some were ideologically committed Nazi sympathizers. Some were mercenaries working for money. Some were unwitting sources who didn't know they were being used. Agent 1, a KLM airline employee who could report on aircraft movements. Agent 2, a British military officer who provided troop movement information. Agent 3, a Venezuelan businessman with contacts in the War Ministry. Agent 4-1, a radio security service officer, completely fictional but highly placed. Agent 5, a brother who operated out of Canada. Agent 7-4, a Welsh fascist in the Merchant Marine, and so on through 27 sub-agents, each with elaborate backstories. Garbo maintained detailed records of each sub-agent's characteristics, their reliability, their access, their payment requirements, their personal problems. Then he made them human. Agent 3 had romantic problems that affected his reliability. Agent 5 demanded higher payment and threatened to quit. Agent 7-4 got drunk and sent confused reports. These human failures made the network seem authentic. A perfect network where every agent was always reliable would be obviously fake. But a messy network with personality conflicts and operational problems seemed real. Pujol transmitted reports from all these fictional agents. The reports contradicted each other in realistic ways. One sub-agent might report a military unit in location A, another might report the same unit in location B. Garbo would report back to Germany, "My agents disagree, investigating further." Then later, Agent 2 was correct. Agent 3 misidentified the unit, have reprimanded Agent 3. This seeming inefficiency made the network believable. Real intelligence networks have confusion and contradictions. Real sources misunderstand what they see. Real handlers have to reconcile conflicting information. A network with perfect information from all sources would be obviously fake. Garbo's network had the messiness of authentic intelligence. The Germans trusted it absolutely. By 1944, Garbo was considered Germany's most valuable agent in Britain. His reports were marked "reliable source" in German intelligence assessments. They were distributed to the highest levels of German military command. Hitler personally praised Garbo's work. The Abwehr awarded him the Iron Cross, one of Germany's highest military honours. German military planning incorporated Garbo's intelligence as primary source material. Every word Garbo sent was written by British intelligence officers. Every sub-agent was fictional. Every report was carefully crafted deception. Every contradiction was deliberately designed. The Germans never suspected. They trusted Garbo completely, right up until Germany surrendered. Even after the war, some German intelligence officers refused to believe Garbo had been a British agent. They insisted he must have been genuine, but made mistakes. The alternative, that they had been completely deceived for 3 years, was too psychologically devastating to accept. Human impact. The agents who became pawns. The double agents of Operation Double Cross were human beings facing impossible circumstances. They had been sent to Britain expecting to serve Germany. Instead, they became prisoners forced to betray their mission. The psychological pressure was enormous. If they cooperated with the British, they betrayed their country. If they refused, they would be executed. If they cooperated but the deception failed, the Germans would execute their families. Wolf Schmidt was the first major German agent turned by MI5, codename Tate. He parachuted into Britain in September 1940. He was arrested within hours. Schmidt was 30 years old, Danish, and an ideological Nazi. He believed Germany would win the war. He believed his mission was righteous. He had no intention of cooperating. MI5 interrogated him for 3 days. The interrogation was psychological rather than physical. They showed him intercepted German communications. They demonstrated that Britain knew everything about his mission. Then they explained his situation. If he refused to cooperate, he would be tried and hanged. If he cooperated, he would survive. But survival meant becoming a traitor. Schmidt struggled with the decision. He later described it as choosing between different kinds of death: physical death by hanging, or psychological death by betrayal. He chose survival. For the next 5 years, Schmidt transmitted false intelligence to Germany. He became one of the longest-running double agents in the system. His reports were consistently trusted by the Abwehr, but the psychological cost was severe. Schmidt lived in constant fear. Fear that the Germans would discover his betrayal. Fear that they would harm his family in Germany. Fear that the British would execute him if he became unreliable. He was kept under constant surveillance. His every movement was monitored. His personal life was controlled. He could not make friends outside approved contacts. He described his existence as being a ghost, neither fully German nor fully British, trusted by neither side, living a lie every moment of every day. The stress manifested physically. Schmidt developed severe insomnia. He lost 30 pounds in the first year. He had recurring nightmares about being exposed. MI5 assigned him a handler, a British officer responsible for his psychological welfare. The handler's job was ensuring Schmidt remained functional and cooperative. This meant providing enough comfort to prevent breakdown, but not so much that Schmidt felt secure enough to resist control. The relationship between agent and handler was complex, not friendship. Handlers were explicitly forbidden from forming genuine emotional bonds, but not pure coercion either. Traumatized agents become unreliable. Something in between. Managed manipulation. Schmidt's handler, Christopher Harmer, wrote in his diary, "Tate is cooperating fully, but deteriorating psychologically. He understands intellectually that Germany will lose the war, but emotionally he still identifies as German. This creates profound cognitive dissonance. He's helping defeat the country he still considers home. I'm not sure how long he can sustain this before breaking." Schmidt never broke. He continued transmitting until May 1945. His final message to Germany was sent on May 7, 1945. Germany surrendered the next day. After the war, Schmidt faced an uncertain future. He couldn't return to Germany. He would be prosecuted as a traitor. He couldn't remain in Britain. The double-cross system was being kept secret. He emigrated to Canada under an assumed name. He lived quietly in Toronto until his death in 1992. He never spoke publicly about his wartime experience. His neighbors never knew he had been a spy. Lily Sergeyev was another double agent with a different story. Codename Treasure. She was a French-Russian woman recruited by the Germans in 1943. She agreed to spy for Germany, but immediately offered her services to British intelligence. Unlike Schmidt, Sergeyev was never ideologically committed to Germany. She was motivated by survival and adventure. She saw espionage as a game. This attitude made her both useful and dangerous. Sergeyev was flamboyant and unpredictable. She enjoyed the drama of deception. She pushed boundaries constantly. Her MI5 handlers found her extremely difficult to control. She would add unauthorized details to her messages. She would improvise stories without approval. She would take risks that jeopardized operational security. Her handler, Mary Scherer, wrote, "Treasure is brilliant but impossible. She treats espionage like a creative writing exercise. Every message becomes an opportunity for theatrical embellishment. She's effective but terrifying to manage." Sergeyev's personality made her credible to the Germans. She seemed authentic because she was authentic. Her reports had a genuine quality that more controlled agents lacked. The Germans trusted her implicitly, but her independence created constant problems. In 1944, she threatened to expose the entire double-cross system. Her beloved dog had died while in MI5 custody. She blamed British intelligence for the death. She told her handlers, "If you don't grant me more freedom, I'll reveal everything to the Germans." The threat was credible. She had the means to contact German intelligence. MI5 faced a crisis. They couldn't execute her. That would alert the Germans that something was wrong. They couldn't imprison her. She was supposed to be operating freely. They couldn't give in to her demands. That would set an impossible precedent. The solution was psychological manipulation. MI5 convinced Sergeyev that if she exposed double-cross, the Germans would execute her family still in occupied France. The argument was compelling. Sergeyev's threat was hollow. She couldn't actually betray the operation without destroying herself. She continued working until the end of the war. But the relationship with her handlers remained toxic. She never forgave them for her dog's death. After the war, Sergeyev wrote a memoir about her experiences. British intelligence suppressed it for 20 years. When it was finally published in 1968, many details were still censored. She died in 1950 at age 43 from leukemia. Whether the disease was related to the stress of her double-agent work is unknowable. But her handlers believed the psychological strain contributed to her declining health. Eddie Chapman was perhaps the most unusual double agent. Code name Zigzag. He was a British criminal recruited by the Germans. He had been imprisoned in Jersey when the Germans occupied the Channel Islands. Chapman offered to work for Germany in exchange for freedom. The Germans trained him as a saboteur and sent him back to Britain. His mission? Destroy the de Havilland aircraft factory. Chapman immediately turned himself in to British authorities. He offered to work as a double agent. MI5 was sceptical. Chapman was a convicted criminal with no loyalty to Britain, but they decided to use him. Chapman was unique among double agents. He genuinely enjoyed deception. He had no ideological commitment to either side. He was motivated purely by adventure and profit. This made him both extremely effective and completely untrustworthy. His handlers never knew if he was ultimately loyal to Britain, Germany, or only himself. Chapman destroyed the de Havilland factory through an elaborate deception. British intelligence staged a fake explosion using special effects. Aerial photographs showed apparent devastation. The factory continued operating normally. German intelligence believed Chapman had successfully completed his mission. They awarded him the Iron Cross. He was one of the few British citizens ever to receive a German military decoration. After the war, Chapman returned to crime. He was arrested multiple times for various offences. He never showed any remorse for betraying Germany. He never expressed any gratitude for British protection. He viewed the entire war as a game he had played and won. His handlers described him as a charming sociopath. These three agents, Schmidt, Sergeyev, and Chapman, represent the range of personalities in the double-cross system. Some cooperated reluctantly, some cooperated enthusiastically, some cooperated opportunistically, but all were fundamentally pawns. Their lives were controlled completely by British intelligence. Their messages were written by others. Their relationships were monitored. Their futures were uncertain. They lived in a prison of deception. Even when physically free, they were trapped in a web of lies. They couldn't tell truth from fiction anymore. They had become characters in a story someone else was writing. The psychological cost of this existence was profound. Many double agents developed mental health problems. Several attempted suicide. Most struggled with identity and purpose for the rest of their lives. They had been used as weapons, and like all weapons, they were damaged by the use. Strategic deception. The D-Day masterstroke. By 1944, the double-cross system had been perfecting its craft for nearly 5 years. German intelligence trusted their British spy network absolutely. This trust was about to be weaponized for the most important deception of the war. Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy, depended on surprise. German forces in France outnumbered the initial invasion force. If Germans concentrated their forces at the invasion beaches, the assault could fail. The invasion had to land where Germans didn't expect it. The strategic deception plan was called Operation Fortitude. The objective? Convince Germans that the invasion would occur at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Pas-de-Calais was the narrowest crossing of the English Channel. It was the obvious location for invasion. German military planners expected the invasion at Pas-de-Calais. The double-cross system would confirm this expectation. The fictional spy network would report preparations for Pas-de-Calais invasion. The Germans would deploy forces to defend the wrong location. The deception required creating an entire fictional army. The first United States Army Group, FUSAG. FUSAG supposedly consisted of 11 divisions preparing to invade Pas-de-Calais. These divisions existed only on paper and in German intelligence reports. Fusag was nominally commanded by General George Patton. Patton was real. Germans knew him as America's most aggressive general. His assignment to Fusag convinced Germans this was the real invasion force. In reality, Patton was being held in reserve for deployment after D-Day. Double agents reported Fusag formations, equipment, and training. The reports were detailed and specific: unit designations, equipment types, training exercises, supply accumulations. Every detail designed to create a convincing illusion. Physical deception created fake camps, dummy tanks, and inflatable aircraft. The fake installations were concentrated in southeast England. This positioned Fusag across from Pas-de-Calais. The geographical logic seemed irrefutable. Radio traffic simulated a massive military presence. Dedicated radio operators transmitted thousands of fake messages. The messages followed authentic military communication protocols. German signals intelligence intercepted this traffic and plotted Fusag locations. Every detail was coordinated to create a consistent illusion. Double agent reports matched radio intercepts. Radio intercepts matched aerial reconnaissance. Aerial reconnaissance matched physical installations. Every verification method confirmed the deception. Garbo's fictional spy network was crucial to the deception. His 27 fictional sub-agents reported on different aspects of Fusag. One sub-agent worked in Dover and reported landing craft concentrations. Another worked near Canterbury and reported armoured formations. A third worked in Portsmouth and reported supply depots. The reports contained enough accurate detail to seem credible. Real locations were referenced, real military units were occasionally mentioned, but with false deployment information. The mixture of truth and lies was carefully calibrated. One particularly clever detail: Garbo's sub-agent, 7-4, worked in the merchant marine. He reported seeing specialized invasion equipment designed for Pas-de-Calais beaches. The equipment was real. It existed, and Germans could verify it. But it was actually destined for Normandy, not Pas-de-Calais. The report was simultaneously true and false. The equipment existed. True. Its location? True. Its destination? False. Germans had no way to detect the deception because every verifiable element was accurate. The most critical moment came after D-Day itself. When Allied forces landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944, the deception faced its greatest test. The Germans had to believe that Normandy was a diversion. They had to believe the real invasion would still come at Pas-de-Calais. If Germans realized Normandy was the real invasion, they would commit all reserves immediately. 2 Panzer divisions were stationed near Paris. These divisions could reach Normandy within 24 hours. If they counterattacked while Allied forces were still establishing the beachhead, D-Day could fail. The double-cross system had to keep those Panzer divisions away from Normandy. The solution was Garbo's most important message of the war. Garbo composed a report on June 8, 2 days after D-Day. The message was transmitted on June 9th at 3 a.m. London time. The message was 2,000 words long, requiring several hours to transmit. The message reported, Fusag remained in position in southeast England. 75 divisions were ready to invade Pas-de-Calais. The Normandy landing was a diversion designed to draw German forces away from Pas-de-Calais. The real invasion, the main invasion, would come at Pas-de-Calais within days. The message provided specific evidence. Agent 7-2 reported continued embarkation preparations in Dover. Agent 7-4 reported ships being loaded with invasion equipment. Agent 4-1 reported radio traffic indicating Fusag remained at high alert. Agent 3 reported War Office discussions about the main operations still to come. Every detail supported the central lie. Normandy was a feint. The message was deliberately sent at 3 a.m. London time. This timing was critical and calculated. 3 a.m. London time was 4 a.m. Berlin time. German intelligence officers on night shift would receive the message immediately. But night shift officers lacked authority to wake senior commanders. Standard procedure required waiting until morning briefings. By the time senior officers read the message, it would be 8-9 a.m. By then, Allied forces in Normandy had 6 additional hours to consolidate. This timing was intentional. If the message had been immediately acted upon, Germans might have reinforced Normandy before the beachhead was secured. The delay protected the invasion. But Germans had to believe Garbo had tried to warn them urgently. The 3 a.m. transmission showed Garbo was diligent and working around the clock. The failure to act immediately was German bureaucratic incompetence, not agent failure. Garbo sent a follow-up message criticizing German intelligence for not responding faster. "I cannot accept that my hard work should be ignored because officers prefer sleep to reading urgent intelligence. If decisions are not made quickly, opportunities will be lost." The rebuke was calculated. It deflected blame from Garbo to German command structure. It made Garbo seem frustrated and dedicated. It made the intelligence seem even more urgent and important. The German response vindicated the entire operation. They believed Garbo completely. The message was forwarded to Field Marshal Rommel and Hitler himself. Both accepted the assessment that Normandy was a diversion. Hitler personally ordered 2 Panzer divisions to remain at Pas-de-Calais. The 116th Panzer Division and 1st SS Panzer Division stayed in position. They waited for the invasion that never came. They sat idle while Allied forces in Normandy consolidated their beachhead. The decision was militarily catastrophic for Germany. Those 2 Panzer divisions represented Germany's strongest mobile reserve in France. If they had counterattacked at Normandy on June 7th or 8th, the invasion might have failed. Allied forces were vulnerable during the first 72 hours after landing. Instead, the panzers waited at Pas-de-Calais. By the time Hitler realized his mistake, it was too late. Allied forces had established a secure beachhead. Reinforcements were flowing into France. The opportunity to destroy the invasion had passed. The deception continued for weeks after D-Day. Garbo and other double agents continued reporting Fusag preparations. Germans continued believing Pas-de-Calais remained the target. German forces remained positioned to defend against an invasion that would never happen. It wasn't until late July, nearly 2 months after D-Day, that Germans finally accepted that Normandy was the real invasion. By then, Allied forces had broken out of Normandy and were advancing across France. The strategic moment had passed irrevocably. Hitler personally praised Garbo's intelligence. On June 29, 1944, the Abwehr sent Garbo a message. "Your reports have been exceptionally valuable. The Führer has personally commended your work. Your intelligence on Fusag has been critical to our defensive planning. Continue reporting with the same diligence." Every word Garbo sent had been written by British intelligence. The network Hitler praised was entirely fictional. The intelligence he trusted was pure deception. The defensive planning based on that intelligence deployed German forces exactly wrong. The strategic impact was incalculable. Conservative estimates suggest the double-cross deception saved 10,000, 15,000 Allied lives. These are lives that would have been lost if Panzer divisions had counterattacked at Normandy. More aggressive estimates range as high as 50,000 lives. The actual number is unknowable. We can't run history twice, once with a deception and once without. But German generals who survived the war acknowledged the impact. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt wrote in 1946, The deception operation regarding the invasion location was extraordinarily effective. We positioned our forces based on intelligence that proved entirely false. By the time we realized our error, the battle for France was already lost. General Alfred Jodl stated in his Nuremberg testimony, "Intelligence reports convinced us that the main invasion would come at Pas-de-Calais. We held back forces that could have destroyed the Normandy beachhead. This was perhaps our most critical mistake of the entire war." These admissions from the highest levels of German command confirm what Double Cross achieved: not just tactical deception, strategic misdirection at the level that decides wars. Information warfare won battles that soldiers never had to fight. Phantom armies defeated real divisions. Fictional intelligence trumped accurate reconnaissance. Carefully constructed lies proved more powerful than truth. Garbo never fired a weapon. He never commanded troops. He never fought in a battle. But he may have contributed more to Allied victory than any general, through nothing but words transmitted by radio, words that turned German strategic planning against itself, words that won a war. Modern relevance: deception in the information age operation. Double Cross pioneered techniques that remain central to modern intelligence operations. The core principle: control the enemy's information, and you control their decisions. Modern intelligence services still run double agents. The techniques have evolved, but the fundamentals remain identical. Capture enemy agents. Turn them into assets. Feed false information through them. Maintain consistency across multiple sources. The technical challenges have changed. In W20, controlling radio transmissions and physical documents was sufficient. Today, digital communications create infinite complexity. Emails, phone records, financial transactions, social media, all must be fabricated consistently. But the psychological principles remain constant. Humans want to believe their information sources are reliable. Once trust is established, people resist evidence that contradicts trusted sources. The double-cross system exploited this psychological bias ruthlessly. Modern disinformation campaigns follow the double-cross playbook. State actors create networks of fake accounts on social media. These accounts build credibility over months or years. They post genuine content mixed with strategic misinformation. The parallels to Garbo's fictional sub-agent network are exact. Multiple sources saying consistent things create the illusion of independent verification. Occasional contradictions make the network seem authentic. The mixture of truth and lies maintains credibility while achieving objectives. The key lesson: the best deception is mostly truth. Pure lies are easily detected and dismissed. But 80% truth mixed with 20% strategic falsehood is almost impossible to counter. This principle explains why fake news is so difficult to combat. Effective disinformation contains enough truth to seem credible. Debunking the false 20% doesn't eliminate the impact of the true 80%. The overall impression remains, even when specific details are disproven. The double-cross system also demonstrated the power of consistency over accuracy. German intelligence sometimes received conflicting reports from different agents. Rather than exposing deception, conflicts seemed to authenticate the agents. Real intelligence is messy and contradictory. Perfect consistency would have been suspicious. Modern intelligence operations apply this lesson. Disinformation campaigns deliberately include inconsistencies. Different sources report slightly different versions of events. The inconsistencies make the overall narrative more believable. The strategic impact of double cross offers lessons for information warfare. Physical military power matters less when the enemy deploys forces to wrong locations. Industrial capacity means nothing if production is directed toward phantom threats. Tactical excellence is irrelevant if strategy is based on false intelligence. In modern conflicts, information superiority can substitute for material superiority. A smaller force with better intelligence can defeat a larger force with corrupted intelligence. This principle has defined conflicts from the Gulf War to recent hybrid warfare operations. The ethical questions raised by double cross remain relevant. Is it acceptable to use coerced agents as weapons? What obligations exist toward people who cooperate under duress? When does deception become so extensive that it corrupts the deceiver? These questions have no easy answers. Schmidt, Sergeyev, and Chapman were used as tools. Their psychological welfare was subordinated to military necessity. After the war, they were abandoned to uncertain futures. Modern intelligence services face similar ethical dilemmas. Assets are recruited through pressure, coercion, or exploitation of vulnerability. Their safety is guaranteed only as long as they remain useful. When operations end, assets are often discarded. The double-cross system was militarily successful, but its human cost was paid by individuals who had no choice in their role. The most uncomfortable lesson is how effectively deception works. For 5 years, German intelligence was completely deceived. Hundreds of trained intelligence officers never suspected. The system they trusted was entirely fake. This raises disturbing questions. How much of what we believe is true? How many of our information sources are compromised? How would we know if we were being systematically deceived? The answer is, we might not know. The Germans didn't know. They trusted their agents right up until Germany surrendered. In an age where information is abundant but trust is scarce, the double-cross precedent is terrifying. Creating believable lies is easier than ever. Detecting sophisticated deception is harder than ever. The tools for running modern double-cross operations are widely available. How many phantom agent networks are operating today? How many trusted information sources are controlled by adversaries? How many strategic decisions are based on carefully crafted deception? Unknown. That's the nature of successful deception. Conclusion: the spies who saved thousands. Operation Double Cross officially ended on May 8, 1945. Germany had surrendered. The double agents were no longer needed. The elaborate deception was over. The operation remained classified for 27 years. The British government revealed double-cross existence in 1972. Even then, many details remained secret for decades longer. Some aspects are still classified today. The agents who had served as pawns faced uncertain futures. Some, like Schmidt, emigrated and lived quietly. Some, like Sergeyev, died young from illnesses possibly stress-related. Some, like Chapman, returned to their pre-war lives as criminals. None received public recognition during their lifetimes. Their service was secret by necessity. Recognition would have exposed methods still in use. J.C. Masterman, the Oxford professor who chaired the 20 Committee, wrote a book about double cross in 1945. The British government suppressed it for 27 years. When finally published in 1972, it became a bestseller. Masterman was 82 years old. He lived to see his work recognized, but he never discussed the psychological cost paid by the agents themselves. His book focused on strategy and success. The human wreckage was left unexamined. Peter Eckersley, one of Masterman's colleagues, wrote in private papers, "We used human beings as components in a machine of deception. The machine worked brilliantly, but the components were damaged, sometimes irreparably. We celebrated the machine's success. We never addressed the component's suffering." The strategic impact of Double Cross is undeniable. The operation prevented thousands of Allied casualties. It shortened the war by months, possibly years. It demonstrated that information warfare could substitute for kinetic warfare. But the victory came at a cost measured in psychological trauma rather than physical casualties. The agents were saved from execution, but they were imprisoned in a different way, forced to betray their identities, their loyalties, and ultimately themselves. The legacy of Double Cross extends beyond W2 Every modern intelligence service studies the operation. The techniques pioneered by Masterman and his team are standard practice today. Double-agent operations continue globally, but the ethical framework remains underdeveloped. Intelligence services are better at using human assets than caring for them. The disposability of intelligence operatives is still accepted as necessary. Should it be? The agents of Double Cross had no choice in their role. They were captured, coerced, and controlled. They served not from loyalty, but from survival instinct. They were tools, not volunteers. Yet they contributed enormously to Allied victory. Their forced service saved lives. Their psychological suffering purchased strategic advantage. Their betrayal of Germany enabled D-Day success. Do we owe them anything? The British government provided minimal support after the war, a small pension for some, emigration assistance for others, but no real recognition, no gratitude, no acknowledgement of sacrifice. Perhaps this is inevitable. Intelligence work requires secrecy. Recognition compromises security. The nature of espionage is anonymity, but the anonymity feels like erasure. These people were used and discarded. Their contributions are footnotes in history. Their suffering is unrecorded. The irony is profound. The most successful counterintelligence operation in history, an operation that changed the course of the war, an operation that saved thousands of lives, and most people have never heard of it. The agents remain nameless to the general public. Their stories are classified or forgotten. The victory is invisible. This is perhaps fitting. The entire operation was built on invisibility, deception that worked by never being detected, success measured by what didn't happen. Battles never fought because the enemy was in the wrong location. How do you commemorate the battles that never occurred? How do you honor the casualties prevented rather than incurred? How do you celebrate a victory nobody saw? Operation Double Cross was a ghost war, fought with phantom agents, achieving invisible victories, saving lives that never knew they were in danger. The agents who served as pawns made those victories possible. They lived lies for years. They betrayed their identities daily. They survived in a moral no-man's land between loyalty and treachery. They were heroes, unwilling heroes, coerced heroes, heroes who had no choice, but heroes nonetheless. Their weapon was deception. Their battlefield was information. Their victory was measured in enemy mistakes, and their legacy is that we live in a world they helped save, through methods we find uncomfortable, achieving results we rarely acknowledge, paying costs we never calculated. The Double Cross, where Britain turned Nazi spies into pawns, and the pawns saved the game, one lie at a time, one message at a time, one misdirected division at a time, until victory. Silent, invisible, and perfect, and perfect, and perfect, and perfect, and perfect, and perfect, and perfect.